The best revenge is to live well. It's been said many, many times, God knows I've heard it enough, that the best revenge is to live well. For some of us, that just won't work. Judging by the way divorce courts rule in favor of the woman, the man will be lucky if he can live at all when things settle down, let alone live well. I've seen a lot of guys go to divorce court and come out of there murdered, bleeding, and shorn like sheep. No, if I wanted revenge, it had to be something other than just a good life. Why did I want revenge? Well, that's my whole story. Sandy, with whom we lived together for 10 years and the mother of my 2 children, decided to go back to work after Ben, age 8, and Marie, age 6, started going to school full-time. She took a job as a parts clerk at a large, nationally known auto parts store. Her job was to deliver parts from the store to car dealerships. She seemed to enjoy the job and the people she worked with. I met some of them at a Christmas party at her company, and they seemed like a pretty nice bunch. The parts store was a block away from the bar, and once a week, usually on Wednesday, Sandy would stop by with her co-workers for a couple of drinks before heading home, and on those nights I would cook dinner and make sure the kids went to bed on time. A couple years passed, and Sandy started talking about quitting her job and having another child. I wasn't thrilled with the idea. I loved the 2 we had to death, but I didn't really want another one. I told her that I thought 2 would be enough, but she pushed me for 1 more. Knowing how single-minded she can be about some things, I knew that she would continue to attack me until I either relented and gave her what she wanted or said something that would instantly make the house instantly quiet. I tried to avoid a protracted argument with Sandy on the subject, but she was getting more and more upset with me for using protection every time we made love, and I knew things would soon come to a head. Then my job offered me a way out. I was asked if I would like to fly to Denver and spend 2 weeks checking out the Denver office. I jumped at the offer. On my first day in Denver, I called Planned Parenthood League and got the number of the clinic where I could have a vasectomy, and when I flew back to Detroit 2 weeks later, the deed was done, and I had the number of the clinic where I could get tested. I continued to use protection until 2 tests in a row showed that I was sterile, at which point I threw up my hands and said, "Okay, Sandy, you win," and then I gave her the protection and told her to throw it away. It was Tuesday, and I had just gotten the results of my last test, and it was the first test that showed I was infertile. I have no idea why I decided to go home for lunch that day, since I almost never did. As I turned onto my street, I saw 2 pickup trucks with the logo of a parts company parked in our driveway. I figured Sandy had come home for lunch and invited one of her co-workers to join her. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I realized that Sandy had not come home for lunch. Since no one else was home, I guess she hadn't seen fit to close the bedroom door, and I heard it as clearly as I could. "Kiss me." I was so stunned that I just stood there for probably a minute before the sounds from the bedroom upstairs reached me. I could hear Sandy begging her lover to make love to her. Anger finally broke through my head, and I clenched my fists, heading for the stairs. I was almost at the top of the stairs when something in my head told me to calm down, be rational, and think things through. Divorce was inevitable, there was no doubt about that, but if I ran into the bedroom, beat the guy to a pulp, and threw Sandy out of the house, I could end up in jail for assault and battery, and when we got to court, it would be a case of he said, she said. I would have gotten some personal satisfaction out of the deal, but judging by the way things went in the courts, I would have lost in the end. In short, I would win the battle today, but lose the war. I walked down the stairs as quietly as I could, even though the noise coming from the bedroom would have made it impossible for anyone to hear, and quietly walked out of the house. I wrote down the license plates of both trucks and left. I called work and arranged to have the rest of the day off, and then I stopped by the parts store and parked there from where I could watch what was going on. At 3 o'clock, I saw Sandy pull up, park her truck, and enter the store. I crossed her truck's license plate number off my list and waited. 5 minutes later, another truck showed up, but its number didn't match the number on my list. At 5 to 4, a truck pulled up and the driver got out. I recognized him from the last Christmas party we had been to. His name was Kevin, and he didn't know it yet, but he screwed up big time when he decided to help my wife. I called home that night and told Sandy that I would have to stay late on the project and that she shouldn't wait for me. The next morning, I was up and out of the house before Sandy woke up, and when I got to work, I recognized the name of a divorce attorney who was supposed to be pretty good, and I made an appointment with him. He saw me the same day. The news was bad. It didn't matter on what grounds I had filed for divorce, she would still get half of everything we had. In all likelihood, I would end up having to pay her attorney fees and all court costs, and since I made more money than she did, I would likely have to pay alimony, which in our state is called separate maintenance. Also, unless I can prove that she is totally unfit, she would also get the kids and child support. Does it matter that she is committing adultery? Not at all. The best you can hope for is a sympathetic judge who will make her pay her attorney's fees and half the court costs, and that's only if you have irrefutable proof of her adultery. If the adultery is egregious enough, it might, just might, help you get custody of the kids, but it's unlikely. I walked out of his office feeling like a murderer. I was totally screwed, and there was nothing I could do about it. By the time I got home that evening, I had already come to terms with the fact that legally I had been hosed, but I had also decided that I didn't have to just go to bed. I could get some serious revenge. Pulling into the driveway and parking, I sat in the car for a minute, trying to pull myself together. I was going to go into the house and act like everything was normal. I had to make sure that this cheater had no idea that I had any idea what she was doing, and I was going to have to play that role until I figured out how to get her to do that. 3 weeks later, I got a second test confirming my sterility, and as I read it, I had an idea of how I could get back at Sandy. Kevin was about my height, and he had the same color hair as me. What if Sandy got him pregnant? I had test results that showed I was infertile, so DNA testing would show that any child Sandy had was not from me. If that wasn't strong evidence of adultery, I don't know what else would be evidence. The question was, would Sandy let Kevin make love to her unprotected if I threw out the contraceptives and pretended I wanted to have another baby? I decided we just had to figure it out. I made quite a spectacle of myself that night, taking the contraceptives out of my dresser drawer and handing them to Sandy. Here, baby, throw them away. I've decided to give you what you want. You want another baby, so let's do it. She tossed the rubber bands into the trash can in the bathroom and then pushed me back on the bed and did something she rarely did. For the next 6 months, we made love like obsessed rabbits. 3 days before she conceived, the very day, and 3 days after we made love until I had no more energy. During the same 7-day period each month, I drove by my house on my lunch hour, and there were always 2 company trucks in the driveway. But nothing was happening. Either Kevin was as infertile as I was, or Sandy was forcing him to use a rubber. Sandy was desperate. She wanted this baby and couldn't understand why it wasn't happening. The first 2 times, I thought that all I had to do was walk into the room and look at her, and she would be pregnant. I was starting to get frustrated, too. I wanted to get rid of this cheating woman, but I wanted her to get someone else pregnant when I left. One night after work, I went in for a beer with one of my best buddies from high school. Ron noticed that I wasn't as cheerful as usual and asked what was up. I drank exactly enough to let it all spill out. I told him the whole story, and when I was done, he said, "If you're serious, I'll do it for you. I have 5 kids, and my wife won't let me make love to her anymore, unless she has a diaphragm inserted and I'm wearing protection." How would we do it? Place the blame for her not being able to get pregnant on her. Tell her that you read an article that said, older women have a hard time getting pregnant because they aren't horny enough. Tell her you want a role play, get a little naughty, and see if that turns her on. Then one night you blindfold her, tie her to the bed, and we switch places. Try to get her to do this for 3 nights, her most fruitful night and the ones on either side of her. Do you think it'll work? We won't know until we try it. We decided to go ahead and do it. That evening when I got home from work, I asked Sandy if she was sure she had correctly timed when she was supposed to be most fertile. She pulled out a chart she had made up and said she was sure she had done it right. Then it must be something else. While I was waiting in the doctor's office for my annual physical last month, I read an article in one of the magazines on the table. It said that some women have trouble conceiving, especially after they have had children and then waited several years before trying for another. One theory is that women are not sufficiently aroused when they make love. After a few years together, lovemaking, while still enjoyable, becomes mundane. I think all we need to do is warm you up more than a forest fire before we make love. How are we going to do that? The article also talked about some things you could try, and one of them was role-playing. We're going to go out next time you're in your conception period, and that's when I told her what I wanted her to do. Are you ready? I asked. I really hope no one who knows me sees me like this. You'll be fine. Okay, let's go. And she got out of the car. I watched her walk into the bar and thought that she really looked like a woman of easy virtue in her short skirt, low-cut top, and 10-inch heels. I thought it was appropriate since I thought she was a cheater. I waited for her for 15 minutes and then followed her. I saw that she was sitting at a table near the dance floor, so I walked over to the bar and sat on a stool from where I could see what was going on. For the next 2 hours, I watched as a steady stream of guys bought her drinks and danced with her. I had already told her to let them have whatever they wanted. The goal was to drive her white hot. I saw her ass and breasts being fondled. Near the end of the 2-hour session, she got up and headed for the restroom. One of the guys she had been dancing with got up and followed her. It was almost 10 minutes before she came back, and after another 2 minutes he came back, headed for the door, and left. I got up from my chair and walked over to her table. "Can I ask you to dance?" She looked at me, smiled, and said, "I'd love to," and we walked out onto the dance floor. "We need to leave," she said. "We need to get out of here before I make love to someone right here on the dance floor." "Is that going to be your first love tonight?" "What's that supposed to mean?" "I saw this guy follow you when you went to the bathroom and you were gone for a good 10 minutes or so. He wanted to make love to me. He was waiting for me to come out of the bathroom. I tried to go around him, but he grabbed my hand and put it on top of his, and as soon as my hand touched his, he soiled the whole front of my skirt. I had to go back to the bathroom and use water and paper towels to clean my skirt. Now please get me out of here, and let's make love before I scream." Did I believe her story? Not really. If that's what happened, the guy should have come back first when she went to the bathroom. Maybe he did make love to her, maybe he didn't. But I didn't care. I wanted her to get pregnant, and it didn't matter to me whether it was Kevin or Ron who did it. Whatever it was, her version or whatever, it got her a violent reaction. I didn't even have time to turn the ignition key before she was beside me and grabbing the zipper on my clothes. I finally decided to pull over and let her finish me off, but as soon as I did, she said, "Don't stop. Take me home. I want it to benefit our baby." I woke up about 3 hours later and lay staring at the ceiling. I wondered how she could be the way she was with me and still make love to another man. It never made sense to me, and it still doesn't. We did something similar the next 2 times she had fertility, but nothing happened, so Sandy got more and more frustrated. The next time she had her highest fertility, I told her, "Tonight we're going to do something different." "What?" "You'll see. Take off your clothes and lie down on the bed." She did as I said, and then watched in confusion as I tied her hands to the headboard of the bed. "What are you going to do?" "Try to get you pregnant," I said as I blindfolded her. "You can't seem to get me pregnant, so you asked your friend who has 5 kids to come and do it for me. He doesn't want you to know who he is, that's why you're blindfolded. Your hands are tied, so you can't give in to the urge to take the blindfold off and see who it is." Putting the gag in her mouth, I said, "Now just lie there and be a good girl." "Don't go," I said as I left the room. "I'll be right back." I went downstairs and saw that Ron was already undressed and ready. He was waiting outside and watching through the window, and when Sandy and I went upstairs, he went inside using the key I had given him. "Remember," I said, "no talking. The main thing is no talking, no sounds at all. Just make good love to her a couple times and then we'll switch." I quietly followed him into the bedroom, then stood in the doorway and watched him walk over to the bed. After he left, I went back into the bedroom and walked over to the bed. "Looks like he did a good job on you," I said as I took the gag out of her mouth. "What was it like?" "You scum! Untie me! Untie me!" I did as she asked, and she ripped the blindfold off, pushed me back onto the bed, and climbed on top of me. "Glad you liked him. We're going to do it again tomorrow and the day after that, each time with a different guy. One of them will probably give you a baby." The next night it happened again. I stood in the doorway and watched. 3 weeks later, a very excited Sandy called me at work. "We did it, baby. We did it. I'm pregnant." "That's great, honey. I'm so happy." And I was happy. I was very, very happy. After hanging up, I looked in my file cabinet and found the number of the private investigator I'd already arranged with. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow would probably be fine. She'll want to celebrate the occasion. He would film Sandy and Kevin coming and going from the house and record the time, and then, using my report as a reason, I would allow him to enter the house and set up hidden cameras in the bedroom. I would go in front of a judge and say I was suspicious, and I hired a private investigator to get me proof of Sandy's cheating. I had the tape of her begging Ron to make her a baby, the video of her and Kevin in my bedroom while I was at work, the private investigator's report, and the DNA test showing that her new baby wasn't mine. I was as prepared as I could be. The only thing left for me to do was wait until after the baby was born, do the DNA test, and get my revenge. Time flies fast when it doesn't matter to you, but when you're waiting for something to happen, it just drags on. The hardest part was acting like a loving husband and caring father when I just wanted to throw Sandy's ass out on the street. But I wasn't the only one up for an Oscar nomination. Sandy struggled to play the loving and devoted wife, even though she met Kevin at our house on her lunch hour 2 or 3 times a week. But Sandy wasn't done pissing me off yet. She wanted to heap one more, final humiliation on me. At 7 months, she left me. "That's a very unpleasant pregnancy, honey. It's nowhere near as easy as the first 2. Not that they were easy, but you know what I mean. I think we should stop making love until the baby is born, and the doctor tells us it's okay to make love again. Do what you think is right, my love. I don't want anything to happen to you or our baby." However, I noticed that Kevin was allowed to continue making love to her until the 2nd week of the 8th month. I consoled myself with the thought that maybe he wasn't as good as me. Finally, the big day came, and I took Sandy to the hospital. I called her mother and 2 sisters and let them know what was going on. An hour later, her mother and father joined me in the waiting room, and another half-hour later, her older sister arrived. I was anxious to see if the baby was Kevin's or Ron's, or maybe even the guy from the bar we'd role-played with. The clock in the waiting room didn't seem to move at all. Finally, the doctor came out and asked me if we could talk privately, and I followed him into his office. 5 minutes later, when I came out, Sandy's mother came running up to me. "What's wrong? Is Sandy all right? Is it the baby? Is the baby okay?" "The mother and the baby are fine. It's a girl, weighs 3.9 pounds, and has all her fingers and toes intact. But it looks like your daughter's been keeping secrets from me. She's in the recovery room, and I'm gonna go sit with her. The baby can be seen in the nursery in about 5 minutes. I walked into the recovery room and looked at Sandy. She looked terrible, but I guess that's to be expected when a mother who is 155 centimeters tall and weighs 50 pounds is carrying a baby almost 4 pounds. When I entered the room, she turned away from me and I laughed. "I thought it was going to be Kevin's baby, but I guess not, right?" She turned her head sharply and looked at me. "Oh, yes, Sandy. I know all about Kevin and your lunch meetings at home. I even have a videotape of what you were doing in our bedroom. On our bed. I'm sure my attorney will have your attorney review a copy of it when they get together to discuss the details of the divorce. I will send your mother to you when I leave. When you get discharged, maybe she or your sister will let you stay with them, because you sure as hell aren't coming back to my house." I turned and walked out of the room, and when I was in the waiting room, her father jumped up and came over to me. Had they sorted everything out yet? How the hell could they have made such a mistake? There was no mistake, Dad. The doctor assured me that what you saw in the nursery was the result of what happened to your daughter. He cut the umbilical cord himself. There must be a mistake. Dad did it, and Sandy did it. I left him, and as I walked out of the hospital, a wide smile shone on my face. Did I mention that Ron was black? The divorce was a decisive blow to me. We split the assets in half and had a judge who was partial to cheating husbands. The audio and videotapes with Kevin, the audio of Ron's night out and the black baby were enough for the court to grant me custody of the children. The judge also denied her request for separate custody and ruled that both parties pay their own attorney fees and that court costs should be split in half. I walked out of the courthouse with a smile even wider than the one I left the hospital with. Speaking of hospitals, Kevin was leaving Taylor's roadside diner one night when someone attacked him, broke his nose, jaw, and 3 ribs before taking his watch and wallet and kicking him half a dozen times in the head. He ended up in the hospital. I, of course, had no idea why the police wanted to know where I was that night, but they seemed satisfied when Ron and 3 of my other friends swore that we had been playing poker during the time they were asking about. Sandy still works as a parts delivery person for a parts company and lives with her older sister since her father won't let her into his house. The court has granted her reasonable visitation rights, so I have to put up with seeing her when she picks up the kids. I always try to smile and be polite, keep up general conversation. Something like, "How's it going? Do you and Kevin still get along well?" I already knew the answer to that question. As soon as old Kevin found out about Sandy's black baby, he dropped her like a red-hot brick. Usually she would throw me an angry look and mutter "asshole" loud enough for me to hear, and then I would piss her off again as I laughed and reminded her that she was the one who was stupid enough to cheat in her own house, where there was a chance I could come home and find out about it. Then, as a final shot, I would ask, "Oh, by the way, how's your kid doing?" And then laugh as I closed the door. Yes, perhaps the best revenge is to live well, but there's still a hell of a lot more to be said for just getting even. The end!